Hi everyone, my name is Uri and I run product management for our CI and CD solution set here at Harness. And in this session, I will talk about some of the cool projects that we're doing in the city space. Before we start, I just want to say that we're going to talk about some functionality that is still a work in progress. I'll show you some mocks and a live demo shortly. So please note that, just like in any other development organization, things can change, the look and feel will change based on the feedback that we get from customers. So if you have any specific question on some of the things we will see today, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to give you more details. So a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Uri, and I am responsible for the product management team here at Harness for CI and CD. And I've been working in this domain for quite a while now, well over a decade. And one of the most rewarding things that I get when I speak to my users, the folks that use the product that I build, and they rely on these products on a regular basis to ship code and new stuff to their customers. When I ask about the value that they get, it's easy to understand that these products help them to get their life back. They don't have to work over the weekend. They don't have to work late nights. They don't get angry calls in the middle of the night, and they have much higher level of confidence in the quality of the code that they ship to their customers. And it's great to know that we can help them to make their job a little bit more easy. And this is exactly what we're doing here at Harness. We always think about new and creative ways that will help you to make your job more easy and simple and efficient, and give you a much higher level of confidence when you need to ship new stuff to your customers, and it helps you to be more responsive to demands that you get from your customers. So in this session, we'll talk about some of the cool projects that we are working on here at Harness that will help you to achieve all that. We'll talk about CD, not a big surprise, and I want to share some of the exciting things that we're doing here that will help you to ship code faster to your customers. And we'll also talk about pipeline governance and how you can make pipelines that are very powerful, but also very safe and secure. So we are totally revamping the entire CD experience and making it much more easy and intuitive to make sure that it's really easy to manage your pipeline and release process within Harness. We are very focused on developers and making sure that we can give you exactly the same experience that you have when you're using other development tools. And when we design our product, we always take into consideration a scale and a security in mind. We want to make sure that you can build a safe pipeline, and whatever you're building can be reused by other teams in your organization. It doesn't matter if you're part of a small company or part of a big enterprise. The things that you're doing can definitely be useful by other teams, so they can leverage them as well as part of their release process. One of the things that are really important for us is to support self-service. We would like different teams to have the ability to onboard their workload in a totally independent way. That means that different developers can start setting up their pipeline in Harness using the technology that they're using in their day-to-day to build and ship products. And you can use a graphical interface or a YAML syntax. It's totally up to you, and we can assist in either of these approaches. When you come to design the pipeline, we are coming up with a super simple and intuitive graphical interface that will give you the ability to create pipeline, even the most complicated pipelines, in less than 15 minutes. And we'll see that in the demo shortly. We're building a very streamlined experience that you can't really go wrong. The only thing that you need to define is which service you want to deploy, what is the technology you're using to build that service, and what is your deployment strategy, like a blue-green, canary, etc. And based on that, we'll build the right pipeline that will work for you. It's really that simple, and you can't go wrong. We'll see it in the demo I showed. We have a very intuitive and easy to use a graphical interface. But if you would like to do all the configuration as code, then we can assist in that approach as well. What we're doing is building a YAML editor with a schema validation that will serve as the IDE for all your harness development. And you'll get the same experience that you have when you're using your IDE for developing the code of your application. That means that when you build your pipeline, we can let you know which entities are missing. We can assist with autocomplete the different variables. We'll let you know what are the allowed values for different fields. So as you design the pipeline, you will know that this pipeline is going to be a proper one, not just from the syntax of YAML, but also from the model of a CD and harness. So you don't have to waste time designing and testing the pipeline until you know it is working. The experience, as I said, is going to be exactly the same thing that you get when you build the code of your application. When you want to make changes to your pipeline, you don't have to do anything new. You're going to take exactly the same approach when you want to make a change to the code of your application. You can create a feature branch for this particular pipeline, make changes, test it, and when everything seems to be ready, you can open a pull request, and after the review was finished, you can merge the changes of the pipeline into the main branch, the master, for example, and then the new version of the pipeline can be used by the different teams. So as we said earlier, different teams can start using a harness in a totally independent way, but it doesn't mean they have to start from scratch. So for that, we have the template library where you can store different entities of your CD model, pipeline, service, infrastructure, and other entities as well. And these templates can be used by the different dev teams if it makes sense, if they follow the practice that these folks have on their development and delivery practice. So that, you know, it makes it much easier to start using Harness. Okay, enough of slides. Let me switch to a live environment so I can show you some of the things that we discussed in action. So the first thing that we need to do is create a project. And a project is usually mapped to a team of developers that are responsible for a specific set of services or microservices that are developed together and maybe being deployed together. And of course, the team can also include SREs and DevOps engineers as well. So let's create our first project, which is the mobile project. Just give it a name. We can assign it to an organization, and we can also assign it with a specific color that will be used in different parts of the product, including the reports. So we created the project, and now the next natural thing would be for us to invite the team to collaborate with us. That's where you can either send emails to those people, or if they are already in Harness, maybe assigned to other projects, you can just select them and add them to the project. When you do that, you can also assign them with a specific role that will dictate what they are able to do. We are going to provide a few roles out of the box, but you can also create your own custom roles. Once you created the project, you can also specify what is the use case that you want to start with. The beauty of that is that you can use the same project for different Harness modules. For example, you can use the project for CI, CD, and CV all together. In this example, we'll use the project for CD purposes. So let's create our first pipeline, which is going to be a Kubernetes pipeline. So this is going to be a 3 stages pipeline, QA, UAT, and production. Let's create the first one, which is the QA. When you when you configure the stage, you should also specify what you want to deploy. It can be a specific service, or other options are also available. Because this is a service-based stage, we need to specify the configuration of the service. We need to give it a name. Let me just expand this panel right here, and the specification of the service. As you can see, we support quite a few technology types for services that we can deploy. We'll use Kubernetes in this example. Now we need to specify the location of the artifact. You can see that I can define the primary artifact and the sidecar if you have sidecars in your architecture. Let's just define the location of the artifact, which needs to be a Docker registry, Docker Hub in my example, and the name of the image. At runtime, we'll also provide the tag that we actually want to deploy. So we define the artifact. Now let's define the manifest, the deployment manifest that we would like to use. So I'm going to add one right now, give it an identifier, and it is stored in my Git account. Need to specify what is the type of the manifest file and the location, which branch it is. And of course, inside the branch, the location of the manifest, deployment, billing.yaml in this example. And you can create as many manifest files as you want. You can see, by the way, this green indication that tell you that Harness was able to successfully integrate with your Git account and fetch the manifest. So that means that you know at design time that the configuration is correct, that we're not gonna not be able, for example, to find the file when the deployment gets kicked off. So we define artifact, we define manifest. We can also specify variables that can be resolved at runtime and can be used as a part of the execution. So we define the service. Now let's go to the infrastructure where the deployment will actually take place. This is the QA stage, so we're going to use the QA environment, which is a non-production. By the way, I'm here defining and creating these environments inline, but if those environments already exist in the system, you can just refer to them. You don't have to define them all over again, but you can do that if this is your first pipeline. Now we need to define the specification of the infrastructure. In this example, it's the cluster of Kubernetes that I would like to use. I need to specify how I can access my cluster, the namespace I want to use, and the name of the release. And the next part is, of course, the execution. That's where we define the logic of the deployment, what we want to run when this QA stage is being triggered. One of the things that makes it really simple is that we're bringing patterns for all common execution and strategies. We have here for rolling, blue-green, canary, and more is coming. So you can, if this is what you want to do, you can just select any of them, and there is nothing else you have to do. Or you can also start with an empty canvas. Let's do a rolling deployment. And I also want to add an HTTP step for validation. So let's just give this step a name and a URL. That's a validate URL. And we're done with the first test stage. Now let's create a second one, which is going to be for a UAT. It's also based on a specific service. So in this example, what we want to do is to promote the same service across QA, UAT, and eventually production. So I don't have to reconfigure the service all over again. I can just let the system know that I want to use the same service that we defined in the previous stage, in the QA stage. And that will take the entire set of configuration from the previous stage. If you want to do some local overrides, you can definitely do that. For example, let's say you want to use the same, so you want to use a different artifact repository, or you have a different manifest you want to use, then you can do those overrides right here. Let's define the infrastructure. It's UAT, which is also non-production, and the specification of the cluster, quite similar to what we did earlier. And the name of the release. And the last part is the execution. I'm going to do rolling as well, and I am going to add an HTTP step, just right here. The actual URL I want to use. There you go. Perfect. So we finished with the second stage. Now let's do the production stage. You can see that this is a very streamlined experience. So at any given time, if there is something missing, we'll let you know. So you know that you're building a pipeline that is a proper one. Let's do the production. Quite similar to what we did before. I'm going to use exactly the same service, and I don't need to do any overrides. The difference here is that this is a production environment, which is of type production, of course, and the configuration of the cluster is quite similar. And this is the release name. Oh, that's something. And the execution is very similar. We're still working on a way that you can actually reuse the same logic of execution. So if you want to have the same steps in different stages, you don't have to define them all over again. We just add the HTTP step and we are done. HTTP. And the URL. And that's basically it, right? It was quite straightforward. We were able to create a full modern pipeline in just a few minutes. Two things I want to highlight here. The first one is that I used the graphical interface to do that. And it definitely makes sense when you have a very complicated pipeline that you want to build. But you can always choose to use the YAML editor to build or update your pipeline. So you can start with the graphical interface. You can toggle to the YAML if you want to. It's really up to you. So again, if this is a complex pipeline, maybe it would make sense to start with a graphical canvas. And then when you want to make smaller changes, you can toggle to the YAML editor. This is the YAML editor that we are still working on. And this is the YAML representation of the pipeline that we just designed. And again, you can make changes here and they will be reflected in the graphical representation. Another thing, the other thing I want to highlight is that this is the same look and feel and the same experience that you're going to have for other products in Harness. For example, CI Enterprise is going to have the same capabilities, the same graphical interface, the same YAML editor with schema validation. So it's very easy to use several products because it's the same look and feel. So if you want to build CI pipelines or CD pipelines or pipelines that have both CI and CD stages, you can do it with the same interface. So that was for the design. Now let me show you how execution will look like. We're still working on the execution part. So let me show you a short recording that our design team prepared. So when we start the execution, we need to provide the tag of the image we want to deploy, and then we can see the progress. So we start with QA, we can see which step is actually running, and now we are in the UAT, stage, which we are finishing, and then eventually we are also promoting to production. You can see at the top the status, which stage is currently running, and you can always see what is the status and the progress of each step and stage. And if there are any errors or something that require your attention, you can see it in the UI in a very visible way. Okay, now let's go back to the presentation. The last thing I wanted to talk about is pipeline governance. So we saw how easy and flexible it is to create custom pipelines that each team can build for their own use case. But the challenge that you have is how you can balance between the flexibility and making sure that these pipelines are secure and safe and follow the policy that you have in the organization. How you can make sure that the pipelines stay within compliance. In order to help with that, we're building a pipeline governance module that will be part of the Harness framework. And it will help you to accommodate that. You can write rules that we can enforce at any stage of the pipeline lifecycle, before execution, during execution, or before you promote the code to production. We're doing it by leveraging an open source project called OPA or OPA. If you're not familiar with it, you can check openpolicyagent.org. And we're extending this project to meet some additional use cases in the CD domain. But the intent is that you can actually write rules in a very simple language. You can see an example right here, and we'll enforce these rules whenever it makes sense. You can write your own custom rules, or you can also use any of the rules that we will provide out of the box. We did a lot of discovery calls with customers to understand what are the key use cases that they have as part of the intent to make sure that pipelines are secured. And these rules will be part of the offering. So for example, you're gonna have a rule that will help you to make sure that there is a security testing step in the pipeline. So that means that each team can build any pipeline that they want, blue, green, canary, and use any technology that they want, as long as there is a security testing step in the pipeline that is being executed before promoting code to production. And that gives you the flexibility, because they can build what they want, but the pipeline will still be secured. And you can have another rule that makes sure that the result of test meet a certain threshold, or code coverage meet a certain threshold. You can also enforce roles segregation. Make sure that the person that committed the code is not the same person that approved the promotion to production. So it's very flexible. Again, you can write your own rules, or you can use the rules that we're bringing out of the box. And that would make sure that the pipelines are flexible on one hand, but they're also meeting the regulations and policies that you want. And that concludes our session for today. I hope it was useful for you. If you have any question, feel free to use the chat feature, and I'm happy to answer any question that you may have. You can also try Harness by yourself. Just go to harness.io and start your trial. And if you have any question or you need help, feel free to reach out, and we will be happy to meet and discuss. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.